Hello. Welcome to the Detroit Experience. I'm an android and I'll be your hostess. Before we begin, let's make some adjustments to optimize your experience.
Of the many questions Detroit Become Human attempts to ask, the value of artificial life and how far you will go to protect it is perhaps the most poignant. Repeatedly throughout the game, the player is put in the position to decide the fate of characters both human and android. Of course, as a game, all of these lives are artificial. The trick that Detroit, and really each of Quantic Dream's games, tries to play is to make us sympathetic toward these characters. Are they really alive? It's a ruse that Detroit pulls off well enough to make the culmination of each main character's story feel weighty. The final outcome of my personal Detroit story was sad, filled with ultimately needless sacrifice. Yet it was also hopeful, felt mostly earned, and felt consistent with my own versions of Connor, Marcus, and Kara. The branching paths of Detroit are intriguing and rather mind-blowing. By the end of the game, it became apparent that there were large chunks of story that I did not experience, largely due to choices I may have made earlier in the game. A character you save in an early chapter may show up later to help you in a confrontation. The decision of whether to attack or flee in Hour 3 might have an impact on the ultimate fate of the android race at the end. Your choices, successes, and failures all have an impact on the story, even if it isn't clear at the time. At a base level, Detroit revolves around 3 player-controlled characters, and their actions during a pivotal 5-day period in November 2038. Connor is the latest and most advanced android model yet. As you're introduced in a tense opening chapter, Connor was made to assist police in cases specifically involving deviant androids. These are androids that have gone away from their programming and have started to push back against their human owners. Connor has a very black and white follow protocol attitude. It is his job to complete the mission, protecting humans along the way, unless that prevents him from completing the mission.
I was nothing to them, just a slave to be ordered around.
Kara is a maid android, bought to help clean the house and take care of all the household chores a homeowner doesn't feel like doing. As revealed in an earlier trailer, she is placed in the home of an abusive father and must decide whether to intervene in the situation. Will she break through her programming and become deviant to protect the child Alice?
Yeah, I can get that.
Marcus is the caretaker for a famous elderly painter, Carl, who encourages the android to think for himself. Carl clearly cares for Marcus and is forward-thinking in his views on technology. For his part, Marcus loves his owner. While many androids in Detroit are stuck in abusive homes, Marcus is actually in a good situation at the beginning of the game and follows his owner's orders explicitly.
Oh, yes, I've forgotten. That is the difference between you and me, right, Marcus? You never forget anything.
Show me your arm, please, Carl.
No.
Carl. Thank you.
I just opened my eyes and I'm already gritting my teeth.
After that common beginning, it is up to individual player choice as to how the characters change during the story. Does Connor stick to his missions at all costs, or will he develop empathy for his fellow androids? Will Kara rescue Alice? To what lengths will she go to protect the girl? How will Marcus develop as a leader? It's ultimately up to the player. The great thing about Detroit, as opposed to your typical GTA or Uncharted, is that your character's words and actions can more easily align. If you espouse a peaceful rhetoric vocally, your actions can follow that path even at a great cost. Want to be a violent revolutionary? The game adapts to that as well. This is a game where if you say you want to be peaceful, you can be peaceful. You don't have to pull the trigger. Unlike Nathan Drake, who goes on a swashbuckling adventure and just tries to protect himself and those he loves, and then in the next cutscene or in the next action scene goes through and mows down 100 bad guys. That's not what Detroit or any of Quantic Dream's games are really about. When it comes to genre, the game really is a bunch of different kinds of games. The 3 Android stories are separate up until the moment they become inexplicably intertwined. This allows for constant variety as you progress through the game. Connor's story becomes a buddy cop movie with his human partner Hank, who hates androids. There's a lot of predictable interaction between the two, especially at the beginning, but the bond that grew between them in my playthrough kept me invested. Detroit's ongoing question about the value of an artificial life is asked repeatedly throughout Connor's story, culminating in an emotional ending. Kara and Alice are forever on the run throughout Detroit, trying to escape the city and live where they can be free. As a parent, I was drawn to protect Alice from the beginning, and my Kara went to great lengths to keep her from harm. A narrative choice revealed late in the game threatens to undermine their entire story. But again, the arc asks the player how much they value the life of these polygonal characters. How much should Kara value Alice's life? How much do you as a player value Alice's life or Kara's life? Marcus's story is the largest in scope, and I believe he is truly the lead character in the game. His choices have a far broader impact than those of Connor and Kara. One theme of the game is the fight for acceptance of androids and a desire to be treated more nicely by humans. Marcus can decide to be pacifist, anarchist, or somewhere in between. One thing that becomes clear throughout is that the consequences of any choice are dire. But if Marcus stays true to his character, he's determined to accomplish his goal.
But enough about me. Let's see if you have any talent. Give it a try. Try painting something.
Paint? What would I... Painting what?
Anything you want. Give it a try.
Quantic Dream's games control oddly. That's just a fact. It's a common element that carries forward from Heavy Rain through Detroit. Though the controls now are more streamlined and things move a little bit more easily, there are still times that a controller interaction felt unnatural. At best, these times pull me from the game briefly. At worst, I can't make the game recognize the input in time and the action fails, leaving my characters with the lasting consequences of the game not recognizing that I jerked the controller to the left. The performances in the game are awesome, and among the best in gaming. The actors show emotion that is captured in the animation. I am truly blown away by how far games have come in this area. Detroit becomes less of a video game, more of a piece of an interactive fiction, bolstered by strong acting and animation. Problems with the story do exist. For one, the 2038 setting seems a little far-fetched. I know that technology is progressing at an alarming rate, but the idea that in just 20 years, 2/3 of our military will be comprised of humanoid androids, or that they will occupy so many of our jobs and be so used widespreadly by the wealthy and the poor, it's an ultimately small nitpick, but still stands out. The certain narrative choice in the Kara Alice story also stuck with me a bit wrongly. I saw it coming, but didn't like it as I felt the reveal largely devalued their relationship. Yet I still felt attached to both characters and worked to keep Alice safe. Another nitpick relates to the androids as they become deviant. There's a specific marking that identifies someone as an android, and that marking can relatively easily be hidden. But through to the end, many deviants just leave it alone. Why wouldn't every deviant remove the visual representation of their slavery? Which brings me to that word, slavery, and the game purports to ask questions it deems important related to some pretty heavy issues worldwide and certainly related to American history. There are clear references to racism and America's history, but many of the moments come off merely as suggestions and general color to the world. There isn't much depth. There are no answers to the questions that it raises. Androids ride in the back of the bus. The game evokes images both of Martin Luther King and of Michael Brown. There's a scene where the androids, in my playthrough, it might be different in your playthrough, where the androids raise their hands as police are pointing their guns at them. It clearly evokes some of the recent events in American history. But I'm not even sure if David Cage and Quantic Dream were even trying to do that, or if that's just me reading into it. The president is a celebrity, possibly compromised by her relationship to big business. There's a widening gap between rich and poor. Technology dependency is ruining modern society. Drug use runs rampant. These issues color the world of Detroit, but largely go unexplored. Especially drug use, which is referenced heavily at the beginning of the game, in my playthrough, is largely dropped by the end. Now, this isn't exactly a complaint. A game should be judged based on what it is rather than what it is not. Detroit is an accomplishment in player choice and adaptability. It's a game about breaking the rules and the consequences of those actions. Detroit made me question how I approach the sanctity of life in a video game. The characters repeatedly have to choose whether an android's life is worth saving, and later is taking one life worth it if you're saving hundreds. As players of video games, from Detroit to Uncharted to Red Dead Redemption and all sorts of games, we largely are not asked the question of whether taking a life is worth it. A video game character's life is just in front of us to interact with, to save in an escort mission, or to kill to get to the ultimate goal. In Detroit, it asks, do these characters need saved? Do they need shot? What is the value of each character? It's the same question asked in Avengers Infinity War and many other pieces of entertainment. What is the sanctity of one life versus many? Do you sacrifice one to save many? There's a moment about 2/3 of the way through Detroit where I, as Marcus, am tasked with either leaving a fellow android to its fate or taking matters into my own hands and shooting it. If I let it live, it might be forced to reveal where the deviants are hiding, but it also might live. If I shoot it, then our secret is safe for a little while longer. I pulled the trigger. One life traded for many. Still, I've never felt worse about pressing R2 in a video game. That is the trick of Detroit, and why it is one of my favorite games of the generation. Connor, Marcus, and Kara are alive. Their story is real. It has consequences. And I am responsible for those consequences. this has been my review of Detroit Become Human. As you can tell, I love the game. I look forward to hearing what others' stories and watching other stories of the game, and even talking more about my own personal playthrough of the game. You can check out my playthrough of the game. It is currently posted on the PSVG YouTube channel. There is a full playlist of all of the videos of my playthrough, or the videos are currently being uploaded. I look forward to hearing what everyone else's experiences of Detroit, what they are. So thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Never stop gaming.